Dustin is on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, at Dave Ramsey, if you want to get into the trouble, because we get into some trouble occasionally on Twitter. Dave, do you recommend mutual funds over a comparable ETF? Well, an ETF, Dustin, as you may know, is an exchange-traded fund. And what it is, it turns a mutual fund into a stock of sorts and enables you to jump in and out of a mutual fund without, or the equivalent of a mutual fund, without fees. The vast majority of ETFs are based on indexes, like an S&P 500, as an example. So a no-load S&P 500 versus an ETF that is in a S&P 500, there's virtually no difference in them. And so do I recommend good growth stock mutual funds that outperform the S&P above an S&P 500 index, ETF, or fund? Yes. Yes, I own many, many mutual funds that outperform the S&P 500. And they're not that hard to find. A lot of funds don't outperform the S&P 500, and you should not buy those. But ETF is not a guarantee. And if you're going to jump in and out of the stock market, you're not following anything I teach you. Now, the ETF is good for that. The exchange-traded funds are very good if you want to jump in and out because you got no fees and you're trading it like you're trading your mutual fund like you're trading a stock then. But I don't recommend timing the market, and I don't recommend jumping in and out of the market. All the data shows us that that is not good investing. That's speculating. And speculating on the S&P 500 is pretty stupid, straight up, because now you're really trying to time the overall market, not even a segment of the market. And so really low probability of you doing that. So if you want to buy an S&P 500 and you want to do it with an ETF, sure, it's an efficient way to do it. I'm not mad about it. I've got a lot of money in S&P 500s because they have low turnover ratios, and I don't get taxed on them until I pull the money out. And when I do pull the money out, I get taxed at long-term capital gains if I've held it for at least a year. So I use it because it has a low turnover ratio. But to use ETFs instead of the 4 types of mutual funds that I recommend, no, I would never do that. Because the 4 types of mutual funds that I recommend, I can find them that outperform an S&P 500, which 98% of you dealing with ETFs are doing an S&P 500. Spider, that's what you're doing. And that's okay. It's all right. It's not bad. It's just not the best. My personal 4 mutual funds in my 401k have outperformed the S&P 500 by 1.5 net of fees. After all fees, have outperformed the S&P by 1.5 in the last 10 years. It's really not rocket science to find them. So, no, I'm not a big ETF guy, and that's the reason, because I'm not a big index fund guy, because I can find funds that outperform them. We recommend you spread your investments into 4 categories: growth and income, aggressive growth, and international. And in each of those, you will find corresponding indexes that you can outperform. Okay, aggressive growth would be the Russell Index. Growth would be the S&P 500. Growth and income would be the S&P 500. And international, you can find an international index to compare it to. But you can find those that outperform in those areas, and I'm going to put my 4 funds in my personal 401k have beat the S&P 500 after fees. So, yes, I recommend mutual funds of that type over ETFs because they're not comparable, because they outperform them. This is the Dave Ramsey Show.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click the subscribe button to get the latest content and check out these other great clips from the show.
So you have to break the cycle. You have to flip this thing on its head and make it behave. You've got to get so fired up and wired up that your broke friends think you've lost your mind.